Hello and welcome to part 2 of the ammo of Mig MiG-17 project. As I outlined in part 1, the aim of this project is to first of all review the kit itself, so did that in part 1, and also review the new atom paints. In the first episode I used the atom paints in the cockpit, and obviously on this episode we'll be painting the model. What I'm doing here is I'm just painting the cockpit on the outside in black. This is actually the interior colour, but the cockpit is going to be closed, and therefore we're not going to get any of that see-through effect. Now I'm pretty much a dyed-in-the-wall lacquer user, and my go-to primer is usually Mr. Surfacer. However, this time I'm trying to use as many ammo and acrylic products as I can. So this is Ammo's one-shot primer in grey. It's an acrylic primer. It levels really nicely, it covers beautifully, and it does provide a really good base for painting. It's very smooth, but I tend to polish in between layers anyway. It's just my standard thing that I always do. I tend to polish all my layers, and here I'm just using a sort of polishing pad and just giving it a quick rub. To be honest, it didn't really need it. The underside colour was done first, and this is the light blue that I used in the cockpit actually. Thinned about 50-50, and then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to build up the opacity just in light layers. You can see it covers really well. It's actually quite a dark grey undercoat, but it covers quite well. It's quite opaque, and it sprays really nicely. As you see there, it's going down very smoothly, very soft edge to it. I mean, that partly down to the thinning, of course. You've got to get it thinned right, and I'm just using the Ammo of MiG thinner, and there we go. It's a really nice smooth finish. Now for some highlights. So this is a desert aeroplane, and as such it would fade in weather. And I've just added a little bit of white to the colour cup, and do my usual technique of going around the panel lines, picking out some panels, some cloudy effects just to break up the surface. These are the two colours I'm using for the top. Now, you may note that the packaging here is a little bit different. That's because I am using some of the prototype paints that were sent to me, but the entire range is out now. The packaging is slightly different from what you can see there, but the paint itself is the same. Again, same with the undercoat. I'll say undercoat, the undersurface colour. I'm just building up the paint in just light smooth layers. So this is obviously the first layer going down, so you can see the opacity of it, and the grey of the one shot is actually quite dark, as you can see, so it is coming through, and some of you may like to use that to your advantage, creating sort of low lights, things like that, like a pre-shading. That's not really the way I do things. I prefer a nice opaque coat and then do my post shading effects over the top, and you'll see some of that in a little bit, but just for now we're just going to put down the opaque base coat. Again, light layers. The air pressure is a little bit higher than I'm normally used to with my lacquers, so obviously lacquer pigment and binder tends to be a little bit finer. than the acrylic paints. This is completely water based, although I am thinning it with the own brand acrylic thinner, which I always advise, whatever paint brand you're using. I always advise using the own brand thinner. But this is their kind of standard acrylic thinner. I don't know if they're going to bring out some specific atom thinner. I don't think they are. But the standard stuff works well. And you can see there, nice opaque coat. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go and do some highlighting. So I've added some white to the colour cup. And I'm going to highlight some of the panel lines, some of the panels themselves, and a bit of a sort of cloudy pattern, just to fade the paint back, just to apply that first layer of weathering. And you can see there, just on the fuselage and the wings, the sort of how effective it is at just breaking up that outline. Okay, the main event really, and that's the dark brown. And as you can see, I'm going to attempt to do this freehand. So this is a stern test for any acrylic paint, is freehand camo patterns. But as you can see, if you get your paint ratio correct, your paint to thinner correct, and your air pressure correct, and your technique correct, same with lacquers, with this atom paint you can get a really tight demarcation for your camouflage pattern. So what I tend to do is, to help with that, is I spray into the colour, if that makes sense. So if there is any overspray, it goes into the middle bit, and then I just fill in, once I've done the demarcation, I'll just fill in the middle bit. Obviously a little bit more tricky now than the doing the previous colours, because you know that is nice even smooth strokes. Here we do have to fill it in, but the kind of principle is the same, and you can see what a nice effect you get. You can get a really nice tight pattern, and I'm using an Awata with a 0.2 needle. And again, same for the other colours, going in with the highlights, same technique along the panel lines, picking out some of the panels, bit of a cloudy effect here and there, and just trying to make it a little bit random. So I'm not just highlighting all the middle of the panels, because I don't think that looks terribly effective, but yeah, just making it a little bit more random. So the models had a gloss coat. I didn't use acrylic gloss here, although I wish I had, just to kind of make it all completely acrylic. I used GSI Krios GX100, which is my go-to gloss. The decals are Cartograph. I didn't bother filming that. We all know how good Cartograph decals are. And I'm doing my standard kind of sludge wash technique of mixing up a tone with oil paints that's complementary to the underside colour, thinning it down just a bit, and then working it into the detail, as you can see there with the brush. The panel lines on this model are very fine, and so you do have to be somewhat careful when you come to remove the wash, but we'll see that in a minute. And just by working it in there, it'll help it to kind of get right in there and minimize the risk of pulling the wash out of that detail. And you'll note that the colours are complementary, of course. Now time to remove it, and just going in with kitchen towel, and we're just going to polish the excess wash away. Now the wash was a little bit stubborn in some areas, as you'll see, so I did resort to using some thinner and a cotton bud, and just going in there and just reactivating the oil paint, and then going in there and rubbing it away. One thing to bear in mind though is that if you've got any raised edges, just like on that undercarriage door there, the acrylic paint. It's not as robust as a lacquer. It's pretty close, but I did just kind of create a little bit of damage here and there. So, but it was really easily touched up because the paint, it sprays so well. It's very easy to just go in there and just touch things up with an airbrush if you need to. But it was only in just one or two isolated spots that happened. Generally, it behaved extremely well. And there is the finished result, and you can see how fine the panel lines are and how effective that wash is. The contrast isn't too high, and it's not what we want, but it does a great job. Now this is a fun stage, the chipping. Again, this is obviously the atom paint, and I've lightened it up. I've diluted it a fair amount, if I'm honest, just to help it flow better. And what I'm doing here is I'm just doing chipping along sort of panels, wing roots, leading edges, anywhere where it's going to sort of get the worst of the wear and tear. And this is very much like the armour technique, where the modeller will go in with the light and base coat first to do sort of fresh chips, but it hasn't gone through to the metal, and then later on we'll go in with the metal, and I'll show you that in a second, and sort of going just inside it, so you get that kind of 3D chipped effect, and I really like that. And on these kind of Cold War Soviet jets that operated in the desert, they did weather quite badly. This bit was quite fun, just going over the red stripe. This was a decal, and I just decided to do some very fine chipping over that, again adding to that illusion of wear and tear. Now for the natural metal, and going in using the sponge technique. Now this is not atom paint. Unfortunately, the metallics weren't ready in time to send me for this test. So this is the MiG steel colour, which is a fabulous colour actually. It's really versatile and does a really good job of simulating the aluminium chips on aeroplanes. And then that's backed up using the brush, as I alluded to earlier, and just going inside the light coloured chipping and just adding to that sort of really heavy beaten up effect. Obviously the contrast is higher against the dark brown, so you do have to be a little bit careful in those areas. Better to do a little bit, step back, have a look at the model, do a bit of an appraisal, and then if you want to go back in, rather than going in a little bit too heavy-handed and then going, oh dear, and then you're going to have to fix it if it looks too much. But there we are. That is pretty much the final aspect of weathering, and all we need to do is just put it together now. So what I'll do is I'll leave you with a bit of music and some high-res photos of some of the in-progress shots and some of the final reveal photos. So thanks very much for watching. If you are an acrylic user or fancy trying acrylics, then go and give the atom paints a go. They really are lovely and behave, as you've seen, really well. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Cheers, bye bye.
yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.